Good evening and thank you. I normally like to start my talk, my speech, with a joke. And I got this from my good friend, the Honorable Nelson Bascom. Let me tell you about him first. Nelson would send out, tell a joke. Seemed like it took a long time, about 15 minutes, right? And then when he finished, everybody was still silent, nobody laughing, the same, but waiting for the joke. It takes you about 3 days later before you figure out what Nelson was trying to tell you. On second thought, I'm not going to tell this joke because you might pull a Nelson on me. Madam Premier, the Honorable Paula Cox, to all my cousins and sisters and brothers, we need to have a down-to-earth, heart-to-heart chat. My responsibility here tonight is to remind you of the amazing accomplishments of the PLP since we became government in 1998. Why is this necessary tonight? Because when you see what the PLP has accomplished for the people of Bermuda, you will leave tonight with one objective: to lift the PLP to another resounding victory in the next general election. After you hear what we have accomplished for seniors, for students, for working mothers, for war veterans, for government employees, for hotels, for the Bermuda Police Service, and for Bermudians across the board, you will be energized and ready to ensure victory for the PLP. When the PLP became government in 1998, our mandate was to reverse the inequities that Bermudians were forced to endure during the era of the UBP, now OBA. The UBP simply didn't believe in helping people help themselves in a climate of dignity and self-respect. Over the 38 years of the UBP administration, despite access to millions of surplus dollars, they shortchanged Bermudians, especially black Bermudians, in democratic representation, housing, healthcare, education, you name it. And what did the PLP government do in response to that? We immediately went into high gear and began to take care of Bermudians. First, we focused on our most fundamental issue, democracy. We changed boundaries so that we would have one man, one vote, each vote of equal value. Imagine that more than 150 years after slavery was abolished, it took your PLP government to establish democracy in this island. Whilst that was being done, the PLP focused on seniors, our precious seniors on whose shoulders we stand tonight. And I would like to call a few of them in addition to the names that have been called already. The Honorable Otiwell Simmons, one of the greatest leaders ever to walk the streets in Bermuda. When you receive your vacation pay, when you receive public holiday pay, when you receive maternity leave, when you receive pensions, think of the trade union movement. You have Eugene Blakeney, a former member of Parliament, trade unionist. J.B. Boris, long-serving member of Parliament and senator. Arthur Hudson, Walter Roberts, Stanley Morton, Cal Smith. In fact, Cal Smith was the one who introduced the late Dr. Bremer to the Honorable Eugene Cox. Also, Cal Smith was Bermuda's first statistician. When we came into power in 1998, there was 5,623 seniors in Bermuda. Today, there are 8,209, an increase of 46%. This government has compiled a massive list of proud achievements to assist seniors. What did we do? We built the Sylvia Richardson Home. We opened up a new wing at Lorraine Rest. Our war veterans, a lot of them did not receive a war pensions check until 2007 when the PLP corrected that. Free car license, free passports, free bus fare, a land tax exemption for up to $50,000 as the annual rental value. Government contributory and non-contributory pension increased 10 times over the last 13 years. Can I say any more? When you go to the hospital, much has been said that we don't take our seniors. When you go to the hospital, if you're between the ages of 65 and 75, 80% of your hotel charges are paid for by the government. If you're going 75, it's 90%. You know, in the fiscal year 2011 and 12, the government paid the hospital for the aged $68.2 million. For the indigent, $9.5 million. Geriatrics, $16.5 million. That's what this government paid to the hospital for our older citizens. Let me say in 1998, that was a UBP budget. They approved $56 million in subsidy for the hospital. In our last budget, not the present one, the 2011-12 budget, we allocated $150 million to the hospital. Last year, we cut it a bit to $141 million. That's the type of money we are putting in to take care of our seniors. Ladies and gentlemen, these historical accomplishments by the PLP was achieved through intelligence and strategic spending of your money on you. Under the leadership of the PLP, we have worked diligently for Bermuda. Do you remember not so long ago when white Bermudans were economically punished and socially ostracized for joining with the PLP to lift up Bermuda? We want to eradicate racism. We want every man, as the Bible says, are born equal. That's what we want. As Dame Jennifer told you about, Dorothy Thompson was the first white woman to run and win a seat for the PLP. Dr. Ball, I need not tell you about Dr. Ball, Stuart Otterbridge. Do you think things have changed? Axane De Silva. Dozens of his contracts were canceled as soon as he announced his PLP connections. Scores of his old customers have ceased doing business with him, and the National Trust has tried to destroy his business. There are some things in this country that still require attention. And they say we play the race card. Cousins, don't be fooled. Don't be tricked. Don't be bamboozled. Don't give away what your parents and grandparents fought to achieve. Don't throw out the baby with the bathwater. Do you remember when we used to look up at dockyard and see one ship in port? Now when you look up there, you see 2 ships in port because your PLP government had the bold vision to build a beautiful $60 million cruise ship dock. And it paid for itself in 3 years. And guess who built it? A born Bermudian, member of the PLP, Dennis Carrera. Let me say this. When the ships were pulling out, the smaller ships, because they don't build them anymore, and only those large ships are coming in, and they were doing the schedule, and they do the schedule like 18 months to 2 years out. They said, well, we can't send any more ships in there. You only got 1 port. And you only got 18 months to build another one. Well, the government went overseas and tried to get some people to build the dock up there. They said, well, it'll take 24 months. Well, you know Dennis, broken down Dennis. He says, I can do it. He done it in 18 months. He done it. I don't know if you remember the fast ferry dock, similar situation, and the government was about to take on a firm overseas to build these fast ferry docks. Again, my cousin Dennis walks up and says, I can do it. And he done it and saved the government $1.2 million. Dennis seems to be, I think, is more recognized overseas than at home. It almost goes back to the Bible. Jesus had to leave his homeland to be recognized. Dennis, don't leave home. Do you remember when the combined opposition would criticize us for not providing sufficient housing for Bermudians? Now you can go out and look at the seniors' housing at Rockaway. Cost us $14.8 million. The Harbor View and Southside, that was the lottery housing, $32 million. Loughlin's, $96 million. Perimeter Lane, $38 million. Butterfield Lane, $12 million. Anchorage, $16 million. Harmony Hall, $6.3. And I haven't named them all. That's about $215 million. I would venture to say that this government has spent over $300 million on housing for our folks. Then you had the rent geared to income. 300 families benefited from that scheme. No more noise from the UBP, now OBA. What they're saying now, you got too much housing. When the Bermuda Police Service and the judiciary were crying out for a new home, and they were promised, the police were promised a new home in 1978. Well, today, they got a new home. The courts got a new home. Government employees have a new home, some government employees, because we stopped renting some places from the private sector and put some of our employees in our building and would save $1 million a year in rent. They are in the state-of-the-art Dame Lewis Brown building, which we opened earlier last year. Your PLP government did that. Do you remember? When only wealthy Bermudians could afford first-class specialist medical care abroad. Today, any Bermudian who is insured has access to major medical centers along the east coast of the United States. Under the UBP, now OBA, a trash truck driver could never go abroad to Hopkins or Leahy for non-emergency medical care. Today, he or she can go because your PLP government negotiated agreements with the centers of excellence in America. I'm sure you all remember when the ride from town to dockyard took an hour. Your PLP government has built a ferry system that has taken hundreds of cars off the road every day. Yes, we have faced challenges regarding the frequency of service, but at least we have a system that moves Bermudians to and from work. And if you remember under life under the UBP, let me ask you a few questions. Who criticized the government when we bought these fast ferries? Which fast ferry did you take in Hamilton today? If you didn't ride the ferry, did you ride one of our air-conditioned buses? Since we've been in power, since 1999, because that would be our fiscal period, we have purchased over 70 buses. It cost us over $30 million. Have you flown out of Bermuda lately? Were you traveling WestJet, JetBlue, or Air Trans? Now, you know, before 1996, 1995, the Americans left. The base, the airfield and the lights was taken care of and paid for by the Americans. Now we have to do it. We have spent $80.6 million on the airport infrastructure. They say we're overspending. Maybe we shouldn't have done that. Maybe we shouldn't have done a lot of things that we had to do. How much are you and your neighbors saving every month because PLP introduced daycare? Right now, if you have a child 4 and under, you can get $175 per week. That's $9,100 a year into that household. And if you got 2 children, that's $18,200. 425 families benefited from there. That's what this government is doing. They're taking care of our people. Get your calculators out. And I know quite a few mathematicians here. I'm just going to run down some figures, some numbers. We spend $30 million on buses. They were probably not, they weren't aboard then. $80.6 million, airport infrastructure. Incinerator, waste disposal. Gotta burn your trash, we ain't got nowhere else to bury it. $73.7 million. New water, RO plants. We'll spend $18.3 million. We're getting an additional 1,500,000 gallons per day. Before that, look at this year, last year. We asked people to manage your water. Give your truckers 7 to 10 days notice. This year, we were 9 inches below last year. You didn't hear no cry for water because the publics, they are listening to us, they are managing the water, and we was able to cope. $95 million for the Dame Lewis Brown building. $32.8 million youth and sports. 3.9 improvements at the aquarium. 5.3 the Len Fogo Urgent Care Center. 24.4 million Port Royal Grand Slam next week. 8.3 new recycling plant. 18.5 million grant to Redco. 12 million, just over 12 million for Club Med. You know, since March 2003, we have spent $1.136 billion on capital expenditure. Since 1999, we have spent $1.34 billion in hospital subsidies. Don't forget the $200 million that we saved the Bank of Butterfield. Not only saved the Bank of Butterfield, but we saved 800 jobs. When our hotels were taking licks, the government says, okay, we'll assist you. Hotel Concessions Act. And look what happened. The standard of our hotels, they rise up. Because they start to spend money. You've got the Reefs. The Reefs winning all sorts of awards. Cambridge Beach is winning all sorts of awards. we bought the plant, the standard of the plant has come up. This government is active in stimulating the economy with the public purse. The question is the private sector doing as much as us? Now, I could go on, but I think you get the point. Your PLP government, despite the hostile media movement environment, has pressed on. Cousins, we cannot go backwards. We cannot interrupt our march now. We must not deprive our young leaders of the opportunity to aspire to leadership. We must suppress our petty differences and respond to the call. The call is coming from the people of Bermuda. They want to be governed by those who share their history and their interests. We must retain political power. PLP, all the way, PLP. Thank you.